It's truly an honor to be here with you today. As we gather in this moment, I want to speak about something fundamental to living a life filled with purpose, strength, and meaning. That foundation is simply this: put God first. In today's fast-paced world, it's easy to lose sight of what truly matters. We get caught up in the hustle, our careers, our responsibilities, our social lives, often forgetting the one who gave us life in the first place. But I believe, and I hope you will too, that when we choose to put God first, everything else falls into place. Putting God first in our lives is not merely a spiritual suggestion. It is a transformative principle that reshapes the way we live, work, and relate to the world around us. When we talk about aligning our priorities with God's purpose, we are discussing a profound shift in how we approach every aspect of life. At the core of this principle is the idea that God's wisdom, love, and guidance are greater than our limited human understanding. By seeking His will above our own, we invite divine direction into our daily decisions and long-term goals. In today's fast-paced world, we are often pulled in many directions. We have responsibilities to our families, commitments at work, social obligations, and personal ambitions that we want to pursue. All of these demands compete for our time and attention, leaving us with the challenging task of determining what is truly important. If we aren't careful, it's easy to let the most immediate or urgent things take precedence, pushing aside what matters most in the grand scheme of life. This is where the concept of aligning our priorities with God's purpose becomes essential. When we put God first, we deliberately make room for Him in every area of our lives, ensuring that His will is the guiding force behind our choices. To align our priorities with God's purpose, the first step is to seek His guidance regularly. This involves prayer, meditation, and reflection. We cannot know God's will if we don't take the time to listen to Him. Just like we consult experts in areas where we lack knowledge, we must turn to God, who knows all and sees all. Through prayer, we ask God to reveal His plan for our lives and help us discern what is truly important. In quiet moments of reflection, we can listen for His direction, trusting that He will lead us in the way that is best for us. It's in these times that we often gain clarity about our next steps or receive the peace that comes from knowing God is in control. But seeking God's guidance is not a one-time event, it's an ongoing process. Life is constantly changing, and so are the challenges and opportunities we face. What may have been the right direction yesterday might not be the right path today. That's why we need to continually recalibrate our priorities by coming back to God, asking Him to realign us with His will. This requires humility. It requires acknowledging that we don't always have the answers and that we need God's wisdom to guide us. When we do this, we open ourselves to His influence, allowing Him to steer us toward His purpose for our lives. One of the key benefits of aligning our priorities with God's purpose is that it helps us focus on what really matters. The Bible teaches us that many of the things we chase after, money, power, recognition, are fleeting. They provide temporary satisfaction, but often leave us feeling empty in the long run. However, when we focus on the things that matter to God, love, service, integrity, and faith, we find lasting fulfillment. Jesus said in Matthew 6:33, "Seek first the kingdom of God and His righteousness, and all these things will be added to you." This verse reminds us that when we focus on God's kingdom and His values, everything else falls into place. We don't have to chase after success or happiness because God provides those things as a natural byproduct of living a life aligned with His will. Another significant aspect of aligning our priorities with God's purpose is learning to say no to things that distract us from His plan. This can be difficult because many of the things that distract us are not inherently bad. They might be good opportunities, exciting projects, or fun activities. However, if these things pull us away from what God is calling us to do, they can become obstacles in our spiritual journey. By keeping God at the forefront of our decision-making, we gain the wisdom to discern which opportunities to embrace and which to let go of. This doesn't mean we avoid all challenges or responsibilities, but it does mean we filter our choices through the lens of God's purpose. We ask ourselves, is this what God wants for me right now? Does this align with His plan for my life? If the answer is no, then we must have the courage to let go, trusting that God will provide something better. In addition to filtering out distractions, aligning our priorities with God's purpose also involves making intentional choices about how we spend our time and resources. Time is one of the most valuable gifts we've been given, and how we use it reflects what we truly prioritize. If we say that God is first in our lives, but spend little time in prayer, worship, or service, our actions don't align with our words. Similarly, our financial decisions reveal a lot about what we value. Are we generous with the blessings God has given us? Do we use our resources to help others, support our communities, and further God's work on earth? When we align our financial priorities with God's purpose, we become stewards of His blessings, using them to make a positive impact in the world. Finally, aligning our priorities with God's purpose brings a deep sense of peace. When we live according to God's will, we don't have to worry about the future because we know that He is in control. This doesn't mean that life will always be easy or that we won't face difficulties. However, it does mean that we can rest in the assurance that God is with us, guiding us every step of the way. His plan is for our good, and when we trust in Him, we experience the peace that surpasses understanding. In conclusion, aligning our priorities with God's purpose is about making a deliberate choice to put Him at the center of our lives. It's about seeking His guidance, focusing on what truly matters, and making intentional decisions that reflect His will. When we do this, we not only live with greater clarity and purpose, but we also experience the peace and fulfillment that comes from knowing we are walking in alignment with God's plan for our lives. Trusting God's plan over your own is a profound and challenging aspect of faith requiring both humility and courage. It means acknowledging that while we may have desires, ambitions, and carefully crafted plans, God's wisdom far exceeds our understanding. Often we find ourselves in situations where what we planned doesn't unfold the way we expected. It's in these moments that the decision to trust in God's greater plan becomes most essential, as it leads to peace, purpose, and growth that can only be found through faith. At the heart of trusting God's plan is the recognition of our own limitations. We are, after all, human beings with limited perspectives. We see only what is in front of us, what we hope for, and what we fear. But God sees everything past, present, and future. He knows what's best for us, not just in the short term, but for eternity. Our plans, as well thought out as they may be, are often shaped by immediate concerns: what will bring us happiness right now, what will help us achieve our next goal, or what will solve our current problem. But God's plan is shaped by a far greater vision, one that encompasses not just our immediate needs, but our growth, our character, and our ultimate fulfillment. One of the most well-known scriptures that speaks to trusting God's plan is Proverbs 3:5-6, which says, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to Him, and He will make your paths straight." This verse is a powerful reminder that our understanding is limited. Often we lean on our own understanding because it's familiar. We make decisions based on what we can see, what we've experienced, and what we think will work. But trusting God requires us to let go of that reliance on our own reasoning and to submit to a higher authority, God's wisdom. When we trust in God's plan, we embrace the unknown with faith. We may not always understand why certain things happen. Sometimes our plans seem to fall apart, doors close, or opportunities slip away. These moments can be frustrating and disheartening, leading us to question whether we're on the right path. However, trusting God means believing that even in the moments of confusion or loss, He is still working for our good. The Bible assures us in Romans 8:28 that, and we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love Him, who have been called according to His purpose. This doesn't mean that everything in life will go smoothly or according to our desires, but it does mean that God is constantly weaving together a greater plan that is for our ultimate benefit. Learning to trust God's plan over our own often requires patience. In a world where we are used to instant results and immediate gratification, waiting on God can be challenging. We may pray for something, work hard for it, and still not see the outcome we expect. In these moments, it's easy to become discouraged or to take matters into our own hands, forcing our will rather than waiting on God's timing. But the Bible teaches us that God's timing is perfect. Isaiah 55:8-9 reminds us, "For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, declares the Lord. As the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts." We may not always understand why things are delayed or why we are asked to wait, but trusting God means believing that His timing is perfect and that He is preparing something far greater than what we can see at the moment. Moreover, trusting God's plan means accepting that His path for us may not always align with our own desires. Sometimes we have a very clear idea of what we want in life, a specific job, a relationship, a certain outcome, and we pursue it with all our strength. But as we seek God's guidance and allow His will to take precedence, we may find that He leads us in a completely different direction. This can be difficult to accept, especially when we are deeply attached to our own plans. Yet when we trust God, we come to understand that His plan is not only for our good, but also for His greater purpose. The things we desire may not always align with what is best for us in the long run or with the role He has for us in His kingdom. This is where faith comes in. Faith is not just believing in God when things are going well or when everything aligns with our expectations. Faith is trusting God even when we don't understand, even when we can't see the outcome, and even when things seem to be going in the opposite direction of what we hope for. In Hebrews 11:1 it says, "Now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen." Trusting God's plan over our own is an act of faith because it often requires stepping into the unknown, walking through uncertainty, and believing that God is leading us even when we can't see the next step. In addition to faith, trusting God's plan also involves surrender. It means letting go of the need to control every aspect of our lives and yielding to God's will. This can be one of the hardest parts of faith because we naturally want to hold on to control. We want to determine our own path and make things happen according to our timeline. But surrendering to God's plan means recognizing that He is in control, and we are not. It's about relinquishing our grip on our own plans and trusting that God's plan, though it may be different, is ultimately better. One powerful example of this kind of surrender is found in the story of Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane. As He faced the cross, He prayed, "Father, if You are willing, take this cup from me, yet not my will, but Yours be done," Luke 22:42. Even in His moment of deep anguish, Jesus submitted to the Father's plan, trusting that it was for a greater purpose. This act of surrender is a model for us. When we are faced with difficult decisions, challenges, or disappointments, we can follow Jesus' example by praying, "Not my will, but Yours be done." In doing so, we trust that God's plan, though it may be hard to understand at the moment, will lead to the fulfillment of His greater purpose for our lives. In conclusion, trusting God's plan over our own is a journey of faith, patience, and surrender. It requires us to recognize our own limitations, to embrace the unknown with confidence in God's wisdom, and to let go of our need for control. Though it may be challenging at times, trusting in God's plan ultimately leads to a life of peace, purpose, and fulfillment, knowing that He is guiding us every step of the way. Life's challenges are inevitable. No one goes through life without encountering difficulties, whether they come in the form of personal struggles, relational conflicts, financial hardships, health issues, or loss. These challenges often test our resolve, pushing us to the edge of what we believe we can endure. Yet for those who put God first and trust in His guidance, there is a profound promise we can experience strength and peace, even in the midst of our toughest trials. This is not to say that the difficulties themselves will be easy, but rather that God equips us with the tools to face them, carry us through, and come out stronger on the other side. When life becomes overwhelming, one of the first things we naturally feel is a sense of helplessness. We try to fix our problems using our own strength, relying on our knowledge, our resources, or the support of others. But often, the weight of the challenges we face is too great to bear on our own. It's in these moments of weakness that the power of God becomes most evident. As 2 Corinthians 12:9 reminds us, "My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness." This verse illustrates a core truth. When we reach the end of our own strength, God's strength begins. Our human limitations are not a barrier to God's help. Instead, they are an opportunity for His strength to be demonstrated in our lives. What does it mean to rely on God's strength during challenges? It means acknowledging that we cannot do everything on our own and that we need help beyond what human effort can provide. By turning to God, we invite His presence into our struggles. Prayer becomes an essential practice in this process as it shifts our focus from the size of our problems to the greatness of God. Through prayer, we communicate our fears, frustrations, and uncertainties to God, trusting that He hears us and is working in ways we may not yet understand. Philippians 4:6-7 offers a beautiful promise in this regard. "Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving present your requests to God. And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus." This peace that transcends understanding is one of the most remarkable gifts that God offers us during trials. It doesn't mean that our problems instantly disappear or that life suddenly becomes easy, but it does mean that even in the midst of turmoil, we can experience a deep and abiding calm. This peace is not something we can manufacture on our own. It is a supernatural peace that comes from knowing that God is in control. When we trust that He is with us and working for our good, we can let go of our anxieties and fears, resting in the assurance that His plan is greater than our current circumstances. God's peace allows us to face challenges with a different perspective. Instead of seeing obstacles as insurmountable, we begin to see them as opportunities for growth. James 1:2-4 tells us, "Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Let perseverance finish its work, so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything." This passage is counterintuitive because it asks us to view trials with joy. How can we find joy in difficulties? The answer lies in understanding that God uses challenges to refine and strengthen us. Just as a piece of metal is tested and purified in fire, our character and faith are developed through the trials we face. Challenges, though painful, become the tools God uses to shape us into the people He has called us to be. Another aspect of finding strength in life's challenges is recognizing that we are never alone. One of the most comforting promises in the Bible is found in Deuteronomy 31:6, where God says, "Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid or terrified because of them, for the Lord your God goes with you. He will never leave you nor forsake you." This assurance that God is always with us gives us the courage to keep moving forward even when the road is difficult. Knowing that the Creator of the universe walks beside us through every hardship, supporting and sustaining us, fills us with a strength that is not our own. We do not have to rely solely on our abilities or resources because we have a divine companion who empowers us to persevere. In addition to His constant presence, God also works through the people around us to provide strength and encouragement. When we are struggling, God often places others in our lives who can offer support, guidance, and comfort. Whether through friends, family, or members of our faith community, we are reminded that we do not have to carry our burdens alone. Galatians 6:2 encourages us to carry each other's burdens, and in this way you will fulfill the law of Christ. By surrounding ourselves with a community of believers, we gain access to a network of love and support that helps us endure life's difficulties. This fellowship is a tangible expression of God's care for us, reminding us that we are part of something greater than ourselves. Ultimately, strength and peace during life's challenges come from a deep trust in God's goodness and faithfulness. We may not always understand why certain trials come our way, but we can trust that God has a purpose for everything. Romans 8:28 assures us, "And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love Him, who have been called according to His purpose." Even when we cannot see the full picture, we can trust that God is weaving together the details of our lives for our ultimate good. This trust in His sovereignty gives us the confidence to face challenges without fear, knowing that no matter what happens, God is working on our behalf. In conclusion, life's challenges, while inevitable, do not have to defeat us. By putting God first and relying on His strength, we can face even the most difficult circumstances with courage and peace. God's presence in our lives gives us the assurance that we are never alone, and His peace guards our hearts and minds, allowing us to endure with grace. As we trust in God's plan and lean on His strength, we find that challenges become opportunities for growth, transformation, and deeper faith. Through it all, God is faithful, providing the strength and peace we need to persevere. True success and fulfillment are concepts that go beyond the typical societal measures of achievement such as wealth, status, and power. While these things are often seen as the benchmarks of success, they tend to be fleeting and unable to provide lasting satisfaction. True success, from a spiritual perspective, is deeply rooted in aligning one's life with God's purpose, living out values that transcend material gains, and seeking fulfillment in things that have eternal significance. When we put God first, we begin to redefine success not in terms of what we have or accomplish, but in terms of who we become and how we live in relationship with God and others. At its core, true success starts with understanding that we are created with a purpose. Each person has been uniquely designed by God with specific gifts, talents, and opportunities, and success involves using those gifts in a way that honors Him. This means that success is not measured by the external results we achieve, but by how faithfully we pursue the calling that God has placed on our lives. In Matthew 6:33, Jesus tells us, "But seek first the kingdom of God and His righteousness, and all these things will be added to you." This verse challenges us to shift our focus from the pursuit of worldly success to seeking God's kingdom, which is characterized by love, justice, humility, and service. When we prioritize God's kingdom, our definition of success changes. No longer are we concerned with accumulating material possessions or climbing the corporate ladder for its own sake. Instead, we become focused on living a life of integrity, kindness, and compassion, values that reflect God's heart. Success in this sense becomes about the quality of our character and our willingness to live according to God's principles. True success is rooted in living a life that reflects love for God and for others, as Jesus taught in the greatest commandments: love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment, and the second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself, Matthew 22:37-39. Fulfillment comes not from the accumulation of wealth or accolades, but from living a life of purpose, where each day is an opportunity to serve others, grow in faith, and deepen our relationship with God. In contrast, the pursuit of success based solely on material or social achievements can leave us feeling empty. Many people who have reached the heights of worldly success, celebrities, business leaders, and even athletes, often speak of a lingering sense of dissatisfaction despite their achievements. This is because success that is disconnected from God's purpose ultimately lacks meaning. Material wealth and recognition may bring temporary happiness, but they are not capable of fulfilling the deeper longings of the soul. The book of Ecclesiastes offers a sobering reflection on the pursuit of worldly success. King Solomon, who was known for his wisdom, wealth, and accomplishments, writes in Ecclesiastes 1:2, meaningless, meaningless. Everything is meaningless. Solomon had achieved great wealth and power, yet he recognized that all of it was ultimately empty without a deeper connection to God. This realization is echoed throughout the book as Solomon concludes that true fulfillment is found in living a life that honors God and seeks His will above all else. As he writes in Ecclesiastes 12:13, "Fear God and keep His commandments, for this is the duty of all mankind." Solomon's wisdom reminds us that success without God is hollow, while a life lived in relationship with God brings true fulfillment. Another important aspect of true success is how we define it in relation to others. In today's world, success is often viewed through a competitive lens, being better, earning more, and achieving more than those around us. However, in God's kingdom, success is not about outperforming others, but about lifting them up. Jesus modeled this principle of servant leadership throughout His ministry. In Mark 10:43-45, He tells His disciples, "Whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant, and whoever wants to be first must be slave of all. For even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve and to give His life as a ransom for many." True success, then, is not about seeking power or prestige for ourselves, but about using the influence and resources we have to serve and bless others. This perspective on success also affects how we handle the resources we are given. Whether we have much or little, true success involves recognizing that everything we have is a gift from God, and that we are called to be good stewards of those gifts. This means using our time, talents, and treasures in ways that honor God and benefit others. In the parable of the talents, Matthew 25:14-30, Jesus illustrates the importance of faithful stewardship. Each servant is entrusted with different amounts of money, and they are judged not by how much they were given, but by how they used what they had. The lesson here is that success is not measured by the quantity of our resources, but by our faithfulness in using them for God's purposes. Fulfillment also comes from the realization that we are part of a larger story, God's story. Our lives are not isolated events, but threads in the greater tapestry of God's plan for humanity. When we put God first, we begin to see how our lives fit into His larger purpose. This gives us a sense of meaning and significance that transcends our personal achievements. We find fulfillment not in what we can accomplish on our own, but in being part of something much greater than ourselves, the advancement of God's kingdom on earth. This eternal perspective allows us to approach life with a sense of peace and contentment, knowing that our true reward is not found in this world, but in the life to come. True success and fulfillment are also closely tied to the concept of contentment. The Apostle Paul, writing from prison, expresses this beautifully in Philippians 4:11-13. "I have learned to be content whatever the circumstances. I know what it is to be in need, and I know what it is to have plenty. I have learned the secret of being content in any and every situation. I can do all this through Him who gives me strength." Paul's contentment was not based on his external circumstances, but on his trust in God's provision and his assurance that his ultimate success was rooted in his relationship with Christ. This contentment is the hallmark of true fulfillment, knowing that regardless of our situation, we are secure in God's love and plan for our lives. In conclusion, true success and fulfillment are not about chasing after the things the world values most, but about seeking God's kingdom, living a life of purpose, and being faithful stewards of the gifts we have been given. When we put God first, we find that true success is measured not by what we achieve, but by who we become in the process and how we serve others. Fulfillment comes from living in alignment with God's will, trusting in His provision, and recognizing that our ultimate reward is found not in this world, but in our relationship with Him.